O próximo orador apresenta-nos necessidades básicas e extras que um programador front-end precisa de dominar para que tenha uma página inicial simples. Apresenta-nos uma aventura épica onde o herói precisa de conquistar todas as missões e elevar as suas capacidades, matar todos os insetos. Nesta talk, vais saber usar a Romance Between Vue and Tailwind. Deem as boas-vindas a Vítor Caneco.
Hi, I'm Caneco, and I'm here to speaking about Vue and Tailwind. So let's take it away. So I'm here to tell you a little bit of the romance between Vue and Tailwind. So first of all, I'm Caneco. I'm a full stack developer at Medicare, Portugal. And fun fact, I like Vegemite and I like durian fruit. So I have weird tastes. So, and during the night, I'm an open source logo contributor. So I help open source packages to have a little bit of branding and have a little bit of an identity on their own. So Vue. So I want to please to, if you can raise your hand, if you ever work with, right, this is online conference. I'm alone at home. Moving on. So Vue. And Vue, as we can see, it's progressive. It can handle both route and state and has a mustache or use mustaches. And Vue is single at the moment. And Vue is looking for a partner to import some CSS. So where are we going to find this partner? So what about the npminder? Okay, so this is a profile. So Bootstrap, it's popular since IE8, has a new utility built and use jQuery in the past. Yeah, good, but not what I'm looking for. So swipe left. So next, Bulma. So it's responsible and don't need JavaScript and it's quick. Okay, no, swipe left. Tailwind. It's all about utilities, can redefine CSS, like to be purge. Kinky. And it can handle anything. So it seems a good fit. So swipe right. And it's a match. Good. Vue and Tailwind like each other. So let's use Vue at a moment. So let's begin their story. And for the demo on this presentation, I'm going to build a form because form is the best way to approach the subject. So form, let's start with the tag form, and any form needs what? Needs an input field. So placeholder, and let's ask for your name and name, and let's ask as well for your email. Yeah, both of them. And along with any input field, it's also always good to have a label. Don't rely on the placeholders. So as you can see, you already have all our inputs, but they're in line. So we need to style this a little bit, even the form itself. So let's style them. And normally what you probably are going to do is to style them on your CSS file, right? So you just end up in your CSS file and just add a little bit of background, maybe a border radius. That's a little bit too much. And for the form and for the label, display not none, but block, because we want to block them. And the same for the input, and give it the full width, and maybe give it a little bit of color in the background. And also, since we are border radius, form, maybe border radius also the form. Yeah, and you are lacking here a little bit of padding. Yeah, seems cool for a little bit of styling for our form, but imagine going back and forth from your HTML page file and go to your CSS file. So you always need to have at least two files or at least two concerns. So that's one of the reasons that I like Vue, because Tailwind has a full set of utilities locked and ready just to start styling our HTML. So go back to the initial state. So instead of styling from CSS file or style tag, let's just style our HTML directly from the HTML itself. So add a little bit of we had a background white, a padding, we have a rounded LG to have the border radius, and the labels at display block, as same as the input, give it a full width, round it, and also give it a little bit of horizontal and vertical padding, and we're lacking the background color. So instantly we have pretty much the same result, but only focusing on the HTML part. So no worries on using any CSS file or whatever, just focus on the HTML itself. And give it a little bit of shadow, maybe just to pop that form there. So as you can see, you have a constraints of rules and a set of styles. So we have always round LG, and that border radius will be across your entire application. So no need to remember the amount of border radius that you give to your application. Everyone will be set and locked and ready. So as you can see here, you have our input, and for Vue, we can just probably use that information. So to use that information, as you well know, I guess, you have a Vue model, and a Vue model just binds the changes from the input to a variable in your code. So in here, and in my main app, I'm using the V2 approach. So that's why I have here a data function that is returning an object. So in here, I have my Vue model name, my Vue model email, and I have prepared a custom component here just to see if our information is being passed correctly. So name, email, and hopefully if I type it here, some information, you will see here the changes. So let's try it, and it's working good. So that means at least this is working. So for any form, what we also need, you need to have a button, right? So let's have a button, type of submit, and let's just to submit, and we also need to style it. So as you can see, Tailwind has a lot of utility classes just to quickly add some styling for your HTML. So white, rounded as well, and give it a full width. Yeah, looks good. So here we have a form. So if we just submit it, and just a quick tip, I don't know if you noticed it, but the input that I put on my inputs, what I've typed, just being linked down to the address bar. And this is probably a big concern that you must have for any form that you have, because if you don't explicitly say the method of the form, it falls back by default to the get method. And using the get method, the information on your form goes on the address bar, and why this is could be a good bad issue. That's because if you have a Chrome extension or your server is logging any requests coming in from your application, some private information or unsecure information might be end up in those log files, and that can be led up to the outside world. So this might be a concern that you must have. So just to be sure, just have post in there and not rely on the default one. So when you just submit here, hopefully you're seeing this because I'm trying to submit something to the form that I'm not expecting the post request here. So that's why the reason. And you're just seeing here the same get because it was the address bar before. So just to be sure, add there the method post and you're safe and you don't need to worry about anything. So let's just try to do what? Imagine that if you want to submit, you want to send out the information through Ajax request. So you want for this to be working, right? The form to be working and wait a little bit longer. So let's just, for the terms of the demo, just mock that thing. So for that, we have on Vue, the V on submit, and let's just call it the submit. And since we are using V2 approach here, we need to specify the methods available in the template tag. So let's just add the submit and let's just mock the request to the server. So let's add a quick set timeout and let's wait 3 seconds until the server works the information. And to mimic this, and what I like to do is always add here a working flag. So as a default, it's on false because we're not working at the moment when we open the page, right? And we want to, when on submit, this working should be changed to true. And when the server, when we receive the information from the server, then the working phase, it's done and set back to false. And normally what you can do here is to add the disabled here and say that that input is disabled while working. But what I like to do is to wrap everything into a field set. Field set, right? And on this field set, instead of going on each input on each button, I can directly say that this field set is disabled if it's working. So, and just to properly see this change, let's just add a new class as well. Not a cloak, a class. Sorry, my typos. So let's just add opacity of 0.5% if it's working, just to properly see the information working on. So hopefully when I'm going to press submit here, I'm going to wait 3 seconds, change the flag working to true, and the opacity will be changed, and after 3 seconds is going to be available once again. So hopefully, oh shoot, what I just missed the prevent. You always need to add this prevent. Either way, the form will be using the normal approach on the browser. So let's submit. Everything is blurred out. After 3 seconds, you can all interact again. So just to check if I can shoot, what did happen? Is it working? Is it? Hopefully, no, it's not working. Yeah, I got a typo. Field set, not field set. So here, just to be sure, yeah, now my inputs are disabled until I receive the working as false. So this is what I'm expecting to work. One thing that I already noticed is the lack of spacing between the elements. So since I have a field set here, I can probably, and I don't know if you know this utility part, that you can add a space of any single element will have the space of 2. But since we have here label in input, what I also like to do is to wrap those up with a div. So we can properly group the label with the input, and they'll be spaced evenly thanks to the space wide too. So this is looking pretty cool, but imagine that your stakeholder requests you to change the background color of the input to a little bit more darker approach, and you have not only on this page that input, but across your entire application. So you just go all cowboy color and just change it in one place, but you just forgot that that full set of classes need to be changed across every single input. So then you have here a roadblock, how to change just in one place, but to change across your entire application. One thing that you might be thinking through, and if you know Tailwind, you can go to your style or your CSS and apply all that utility classes, and wrap to a single class. You can do that, but since you are using Vue, why not just use a Vue component and group that classes on that component? So let's just copy this, and I already created here an input component. So I'm going to paste it here, and instead of that one, I'm going to call input, and since I'm using a component, so I need to import it, input from components, from my components folder, and I also need to declare it on my Vue app. So I need to declare it. I'm using an input. So I have a typo where my components, yeah, here. So as you can see right away, my input, it's already in there and with that darker color. Good. So that means that I might just cut that off and add 2. Yeah, cool. But I have 2 names. No, I don't want that. I want what? I want to have a label, right? That I want to change that label to be name, and the other one needs to be email. And what I had before was a placeholder, needs to be your name, and the other placeholder should be your email. I save it, and it's not working. Right. That's because my input, it's stuck with that option that I already pasted in. So to change that, I need to send props from the parent back to the child. And for that, I need to explicitly say that this child is expecting a label, that it's a string, and a placeholder that is also a string. So I can use that and bind, vbind. This is just a shorthand for vbind. You can type it vbind in your attribute, or you can just leave it with the column. So placeholder here and label with the mustaches. So you can see it instantly changed right away what's happening. But what about the binding from the input with my data in my application? So that means that if I change it here, we'll be changing here. Apparently, no. Oh, you might be thinking, oh, that's right. I just need to Vue Model the name because I have here the properties on my parent and not on the component. I'm just going to change that out. So hopefully it works, but it doesn't. That's pretty normal because Vue only works with information on the actual component. So you need to, if I want to hear the changes from the child, I need to explicitly say that I'm emitting and passing from the component and receiving from the component. So with that in mind, I need to go to my input component. And instead of saying that this is a Vue model name, it's actually a Vue model value. And in this term, in this approach, I'm using the V3 option, not the other one, not the V2. So in V3, Vue 3, I can use the setup method. And it's pretty much like the created method on Vue 2. And the setup receives a props parameter, and we also have an init, so we can properly receive the props from the parent and emitting any change that we want back to the parent. So with that, I just going to create a new value that I'm going to inject in that Vue model on the child Vue model. And it's going to be a computer property because I want to be changed according to the state. So it's going to be dynamically. So normally, since I'm passing as an object for the computed, I'm hoping to receive a getter and a setter. And in the getter function, I'm going to hear about the props. And V3, by default, since I'm passing a Vue model there, it's going to be injected by default a model value. And I'm going to expect anything. Since you are using null, it's going to be anything. So props model value. And as a setter, I'm going to hear about the change, and I'm going to emit that change updated the model value, the name of the attribute, with the value that I'm receiving in the function. And in this case, I need to return this new variable to the template so I can properly use it. So hopefully, and really hopefully, if I change it here, the information I'm going to be changing as well in the parent. So change and it change. Good, it's working. So not a bit lost. What we can do it as well. So imagine that you have here an email, right? And in here, as you can see, you're always expecting a type text, but you might want to change that according to whatever you want, right? So instead of using type text, you can also vbind or use the shorthand and expecting to receive from the parent a type property. So we can use it here as a type. And in this case, I'm going to be a little bit more specific. So the type of the type is going to be a string. And as a default, it's going to be text. So imagine that you're not receiving that prop from the parent. So as a default option is going to be text. But if you pass anything not text or anything for the child, it's going to be whatever you type it. So imagine that in this case, I didn't explicitly say the type. So hopefully both of them are type text, right? As you can see here, type text. But if I change it here to type email, this guy will be type email. So great. So you now learn a way to change any property of your child component to change the properties from the parent to the child component. So this looks good. Hopefully it works the same. Yeah, and you don't need to worry about changing the input in every single place, because in this case, if you're going to change it in here in our component, it's going to be changed across the entire application. So this is the big opportunity that you have here. But I don't know if you know it, but V3 also has a new special thing going, and it allows you to even narrow down here the information, because even this, coming from V2 to V3, we already simplify everything by using the composite API, but you can also be a little bit more narrow the information down. So one new thing, it's you can say that this script is a setup. So imagine that anything here, it's already being placed down on the setup. So I can just grab the entire information on my setup method. And since it's the setup, I don't need to return it. And one thing that is missing, the imports needs to be there, right? But I'm waiting for the props, and this is where you need to change stuff a little bit. But just grab those props and create a new props attribute. So you can just create, you just use the define props from Vue and put it in there. So you can be waiting for those props, and I'm lacking the emit. So just add emit and define emit, and it will work this way. But normally Vue likes to know what type of emits are your child is going to send out to the parent. So you can explicitly you can say it there. So as you can see, I narrow down even more the information, and hopefully it works the same. So it's a matter of taste. If you like this approach, you can use it. To be honest, I like this approach because he narrows down my information. The only thing missing here is my extension for VS Code that I'm not entirely using it, this value, so it's a little bit more lighter, but no matter that, it works the same, so no worry. So here you have the inputs already fine and ready, and as a child component, good. What you can do next is also move this button as a component. So all this style also could be across your entire application. So let's just cut that out and create a button component. So we already have here a button component. So let's just paste it here. And we need to, of course, we need to properly import it and declare it. So button, and hopefully, yeah, I forgot the missing tag. So hopefully, yeah, it's there. Just to be sure, just so this is a submit. Yeah, it's working. So we have already narrowed down the classes as a component. And if I change it here to blue to indigo, it will be changed across my entire application. But one thing that I don't like so much is that I might be using the classes of the button, but the text itself might be changed across from form to form. So instead of submit here, I want to actually be send. And to change that, I could just remove the text that I already have and just have slot. And in this case, it will be send instead of submit. And as we did for the input, we can just copy here these props and go to the buttons, find props, and we can be hearing out the type, and the default could be button, and we can say type. So imagine in this case, my button as a default will be the type of button, but if I change it here as a type of submit, then we'll be working as a submit. And so we just narrow down that component to a component itself that if I change in one place, it will change across the entire application once again. Now, one tiny aspect that I always like to do in my buttons it's to actually, there's different kinds of buttons, right? You have the default ones, you have the primary buttons, you have the ghost buttons, you have the link buttons, right? If you're familiar with the Bootstrap family, you have a lot of buttons locked in, right? So for using that, what we can do, we can create different buttons. So button primary, button default, but we can use just a single component in reusing that styles across the entire application, right? So for that, this is one suggestion that I can use. That's why I can give you. So that's why here I have my attributes here. So imagine that you have here a class name. It needs to be a computer property. In this case, it's going to be a function. So I don't need to have a setter and a getter. I just return whatever I want. So imagine that I just going to grab the entire class, utility classes here. I'm just going to vbind the class name from that variable. So that computer property is going to pass this for the class of the button. So far so good. So, but this is more my primary button. For the default, I might want to be a gray one, and instead of black, white is going to be black, right? This is more the default button, and this could be the primary button. So in here, what we can do, and this is, some of you might say that it's still an ugly approach, but for the sake of the demo, this will work. So in here, I'm just going to switch through, so switch anything. And the default one is going to be my default class. I'm going to return my default set of classes. And I'm just hearing out the attributes being passed from the parent. And I can say that if primary, it's not undefined, I'm going to return. Hopefully I have it here. I don't have it, so no worry. I'm just going to copy again and going to return, and my indigo 500 and white. I'm missing here a typo. So imagine this will be switching through, so the switch will be working. And if I have an attribute passed down from the parent to the child with primary on it, I'm going to pass the primary set of classes for a primary button. And if not, that didn't happen, I'm going to pass the default version. So in here you see it right away because I'm not passing the primary attribute. So here you can see right away that it changed and it grabs the full set of classes for the primary. So that means if I just remember this one and cancel, so you have two buttons, one as a default one and one as a primary. And you can go crazy with this approach. Imagine that you have here also an option to have a large button or a small button. You can go crazy with this computer property or just change it directly on the template. But this is in my opinion, a fun way to properly have a component that can handle the different approaches of the button. So back to here. One thing that we can add, just to summarize our form, we can add like a select, right? A select here, and imagine that you have three options. Wait, shoot. Yeah, three options. So our options will be speaking about Tailwind in Vue. So we have here our select. What did happen? Just make bug, don't know where. debug coding is always stressful. So yeah, I forgot to close once again the select. So you can see here that we have our select here. So you just need to Vue Model option, for example, right here as a null. And what did happen? Yeah, it's normal because Vue, since the Vue model is null, and in here you have the option, and you don't have actually an option with the value null. So for fixing that, that's why you can use a value of null. In this first option, I always like to give it like the placeholder. So pick an option. And you can see that it's already been selected by default. But I don't want to, if I change it, I don't want to go back to that option because I want to just be working as a default, right? So for that, I don't know if you know it, but you can use the selected and the disabled just to properly say that this option is selected and is also disabled. So as you can see here, I can change it, but I can change it back to my placeholder. And that's good. And what we can do next is give it a little bit of styling, right? So be gray as well, px2, px1, full, rounded, just to be a little bit close to that or the rest of our inputs. And as well, we need the label and option, whatever. Yeah, and you need to wrap those up with the div and looking good. So you have here an option. So since we are using this approach of getting the element in their own component, so you can grab this one and also created here select components already. So I just needed to declare it and of course import it. Yeah, and hopefully what's happening? Select. Yeah, I forgot to call it here. So I have here the options again, and we are missing the Vue Model option. What's happening? The model, not mode. Sorry, my typos. Yeah, so you can see here, we already been changing, and the option is going to pass through. And one thing that I noticed, yeah, the option it's not being passed correctly. One before that, I noticed that I don't want my option to be inside my component because I might want to change my options based on the form, right? So once again, I'm going to use the slot here. So in the select, I'm just going to pass the set of options. You can see here we have the options. And yeah, one thing that I missed, is to put the Vue model as value. And this is pretty much the same approach that we did in the past. So you can see it that pick an option is the default one. I can change it. And my options is actually based on the form. And it's good looking. But still, one thing that it's picking on me is that the pick an option should have the be as a with the placeholder color and be placed being passed through as a placeholder. So for that, I want to say I even want to send the label and say option as a pass a placeholder, right? And I want to say pick word instead of pick an option. And in here, I want to receive a label. It's pretty much just a remember of what you did in the past. Placeholder. So I want to receive this placeholder. So this placeholder should be here, right? You have here though, and you can already see that we change the placeholder according from what we receive from the parent, and the label is also changed, hopefully, words. Yeah, it changed. But one thing that I still want, it's that placeholder color. So how can we change that? Imagine value, if it's not null, it has a value. So with that in mind, we can vbind the class, or using, once again, the shorthand, we can just add here, and this is the different option. So we can either pass an object or a list of classes to add in. So if it has a value, so it would be text black, but if it doesn't have a value, it needs to be gray, 500, I guess. So as you can see, it's 400. So you can see that the default one, it's looking close to the placeholder like the other input fields, but if I change it, it changes back to the black, and you're done. So here what we can do, just to wrap everything down, and just to pass this form with the method in the submit, we can pass down to the also a component, we can pass the field set, we can pass it, and as you can see, you can componentize your element, and if you change in one place and using Vue, you're going to be using Tailwind, just change that Tailwind classes, and it'll be changed across your entire application. So it's very cool. Another hot tip that you might don't know, if you're using Vue Tailwind, and just babbling between both of them, I don't know if you're using Tailwind JIT, but Tailwind JIT has a cool option that you can specify just a tiny change in one element if you need it. Imagine that only this form needs to be yellow and not the other forms in your entire application. So what you can normally do is going to add a different class on that element, but it's not the yellow from the Tailwind, it's a specific yellow. But with Tailwind JIT, you can just, instead of BG white, you can just use it here as a BG and specify actually the color that you want on that only class in this moment. So this is my last hot tip for you. Just go dig on this JIT option, and you have this now, the power of this in your hands. So now we can properly say, and they stay what? Maybe happily ever after. And I mean Vue and Tailwind. So, and that's it. So I hope that you learn a couple of new tricks using Vue and Tailwind. And it was a pleasure to be here. So let's speak about something else in the future. See ya. Bye-bye.